What's up gamers, my name is Orcrist, and today I'm going to be giving you part 2 of my 3-part series on the Shrine Coordinate Warp. If you missed part 1 and you want to know a little bit more about the science of SCW, a link to that video can be found in the top right corner. So now that we have a better understanding of the science behind the SCW, now we'll go into actually executing the trick. As we said in part 1, there are two main methods to doing this, the chest method and the chestless method. I don't want to waste too much time talking about the chest method because it's kind of an outdated technique and it isn't very useful for speedruns anymore, so if you want to skip to the chestless tutorial, there is a timestamp listed below. The requirements for the chest method are 2 metal chests which you can use amiibos to make appear, at least 8 bundles of wood, and either a fire arrow or a flame weapon. Essentially what you do is you open both chests and you stack them as you see in the video, then you hop onto this little ledge you've created and start running against the top chest. Doing this puts Link in an ungrounded state, though he's clearly walking on ground. If done correctly, you will see the A prompt for the elevator come up as you run against the top chest. After you press A to get storage, make sure to keep holding forward. If you don't, Link will fall down and you will enter the elevator as normal. So that's how you get elevator storage, but now we're stuck with nowhere to go. To get around this problem, what we do is we use the updrafts from campfires to stop Link from becoming grounded again. This is going to sound silly, but for both the chest and chestless method of SCW, you'll want to practice your placement of campfires. The reason I say that is because if the campfires are too close to each other, either you won't have the appropriate updraft height, or you won't get an updraft inside the elevator chamber. Now that we have storage, the last thing to do is a mid-air wind bomb so that we get within range of the load radius of the target shrine and either cancel a fire or interact with a new object. So if it isn't obvious why speedrunners don't use this method anymore, it's because it takes forever to set up, and if you fail it, that means you have to set it up all over again. And perhaps the biggest drawback is that you have to find 2 metal chests to make this work, which generally is slow, and to make it faster you have to purchase several amiibos because the game will only let you use them once per day. Ugh, now that that's over, we can finally start talking about the real tutorial. Once again, Legend of Link came to the rescue by developing the chestless setup. The method for achieving storage without a chest is essentially the same as before. We want Link to be ungrounded but still in range to activate the elevator, and this is possible by using the fall damage cancel glitch in a different way. If you've seen Breath of the Wild speedruns before, you've definitely seen a fall damage cancel. Typically it's used to survive falling from a great height before we have the paraglider, or if you run out of stamina and you don't have any other way of saving yourself. In this scenario, we use the fall damage cancel to ground Link against the inner wall of the shrine elevator. Before we move on, let's talk briefly about what the game considers grounded versus ungrounded. To interact with an object like a chest or an elevator, the game requires that Link's feet are firmly placed on the ground. If you are airborne, Link is slipping down a slope, or ragdolling, the game considers you ungrounded, and while you may be able to activate the cutscene for that object, there will be a delay until you are technically grounded again. For the chestless setup, start by holding the R button to go into the throw aim. It's imperative for this setup to keep the elevator prompt active the whole time, and to do so you can either tilt the motion controls down or use the R stick for camera movement. Next, you quickly do a side hop to the left and perform a fall damage cancel, while at the same time turning the camera slightly back to the elevator. This turn isn't technically required, but it helps with consistent storage. While performing the fall damage cancel, continue to hold left so that Link becomes grounded on the wall. It's in this brief window that you can activate storage without immediately entering the ground trigger. If you hear the elevator tone, you have storage. From here, it's important to mash X as fast as you can to jump and pull the glider. Some people pause in between getting storage and jumping, but again, this isn't required. This method of looking down at the elevator has been a tried and true method of speedrunners for the past few months. Most feel confident that they can get activation storage when they need to and safely get out of the shrine. It also has the benefits of being much faster than the chest setup, and there's even a separate method of performing a shield flip out of the activation and ragdolling out of the shrine so that you can just walk away. This also allows you to skip farming more wood and makes it a bit more efficient. There are, however, a few drawbacks to the chestless setup. Number one, it's much more difficult to pull off, and when a lot of new runners are attempting to learn this setup, they end up having a number of issues. Either they don't get storage at all, which could mean that either their position was off, or they didn't jump at the correct angle, or they weren't looking down at the right angle, or they didn't successfully do the fall damage cancel and didn't become grounded, or they accidentally wait on a fire instead of activating the elevator. Or you experience the most common failure, you activate the elevator but fail to become airborne. For For these reasons, I started to explore different methods for activating the elevator just to see what made more sense or what might be a bit more approachable for new runners. So on a whim, I decided to face link to the back of the elevator chamber just to see what a fall damage cancel looked like and to get a better understanding of things, and miraculously I was able to get storage and glide away on my first try. And after messing with it for a bit, I was able to understand why this method seems so much easier. For one, you have the elevator in frame the entire time, so you never lose that activation window, whereas with the previous method it's very easy to lose the elevator prompt. 2, it's impossible to accidentally wait on a fire because they aren't in frame. And 3, you can see Link performing the fall damage cancel, so you can judge for yourself whether or not you'll become grounded. Here's how you execute this method. Simply look to the back of the elevator while holding the R button so that Link has the weapon ready to throw, just like the looking down method. Then you jump to the side and perform the fall damage cancel. And as you are in the pause menu, what I do is I take my left index finger and hold the L stick to the left so that Link stays grounded on the wall, and I instantly start mashing X and A together as fast as I can, so that when I release the shield menu, Link is able to activate the elevator and jump off the wall so that you can safely glide out. And that's it. It's really that simple. Now that we have storage, the last step of course is to get within range of the target shrine. But one note about waiting on a campfire or interacting with a new object. Link's feet have to be in that grounded state, otherwise you won't be able to activate the cutscene. Let's talk for a second about how this setup can fail. The side hop and fall damage aren't terribly specific, nor is Link's standing position. I find it best to make sure, however, that you jump perpendicular to the wall, which is hard because the elevator chamber is kind of oval shaped and none of the walls are parallel to each other. And sometimes you might appear to be performing the trick correctly, but you don't get the storage. What this means is that the camera's getting too close to Link as you do the fall damage cancel. Before I start the throw aim, I try to adjust the camera freely so that it looks directly into the chamber. Doing so will prevent the camera angle from getting messed up again. And if you do fail to get storage, simply reset the camera's position again before aiming the weapon. One last important note on escaping with storage, and I'll stop nagging you guys. Even if you ragdoll or launch over 100 meters away from the origin shrine, the game can still randomly trigger the elevator. We don't necessarily know why this happens, so it's best to try to remain airborne until you reach your destination. Now, you may have noticed one drawback to my setup. Because Link is facing to the back of the elevator, you can't easily do a shield flip and ragdoll out of the chamber. This problem may be a turnoff for some runners, considering that you'll have to farm extra wood and maybe even fire arrows. But it is possible with this method to blow yourself up, then shield flop and ragdoll to escape the elevator activation. I personally can't say it's worth the risk. But at the end of the day, this method is much easier and consistent than the looking down setup, and farming extra wood isn't that bad if you know where to look. I know this was a lot to take in, and believe me, I know this is a hard trick, and don't feel too bad if you can't get it after several attempts. My recommendation would not only be to practice storage, but to practice the mid-air wind bomb afterward. The campfires and plants nearby can cause a lot of lag, and that lag can kill your launch. So just be careful. So that covers the quote-unquote easy SCWs where you never leave a shrine's load radius. In part 3, we're going to be covering the god-awful buffered SCWs. These are necessary to learn if you want to successfully skip Va Naboris and the Kakariko quests, and many others. But fair warning, they suck. Well, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video informative and entertaining. If so, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for when the next part of this series comes out. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Orcrist_GC, but until then, continue going fast, gamers.